So let's talk about how to tame your inner critic. I'm hoping that I've done this in the right event. I think I've done it in the event, haven't I? So perhaps people can say hello and tell me if you're watching this. And I'll just check that everything's working okay inside the group. I've got a few people do say hi if you're watching. Good. We're inside the group. We're in the right place. Everything's under control. Hi, Dan. Yeah, so what's going on with your internal critic? How do you deal with it? How do you identify it? How do you deal with it? That's what I'm going to talk about today. And this is stuff that I learned. Hi, Dominic, and hi, Helen. This is stuff I learned from doing 6 years of professional development courses in person-centered counselling, and particularly in integrative psychotherapy, which I did for about, I say 5 or 6 years. And here's how to identify if your internal critic is holding you back. If you find that you have a big problem with being confident when you need to be confident, if you feel like any criticism cuts you to the bone, if you are a relentless perfectionist to the extent that it's interrupting your life, if you are a procrastinator and you put things off to the last minute and then have to rush through them, if you identify any of these things, then feel free to fess up in the comments. Andy says few. I thought it was me. Oh, okay, just checking something wasn't going wrong with the video feed. So yeah, these are all signs that something's going on with your internal critic, and it's kind of out of control. Just looking at my notes down here. Another one is that you find it difficult to be optimistic, and you have negative visions of the future and the kind of worst case scenario going through your head. So what's going on is there is a subpersonality within us, according to Gestalt psychotherapy. I think this is the most useful model for me. And in Gestalt psychotherapy, there's a subpersonality called top dog. And that's how we were taught to think about it and talk about it when I was doing psychotherapy training. And it was some people fessing up to being a procrastinator. Not too keen on criticism. Yeah, good. Thank you. People are saying, good to see me looking well. Yeah, I felt a bit rough for the first 24 hours after the AstraZeneca vaccine. I had like serious flu type symptoms. They've gone now, thankfully, so I'm all right. So the top dog is something that is continually talking to you and is saying things that are either not in any way helpful, or if there is some element of truth in it, and those ones often the ones that hurt the most, they're expressed in such a damning or shame-wrapped way that you might as well just chuck the whole thing out, because you can't, when you get a really bad message from the top dog, and these are the kind of messages you get, like, you'll never amount to anything. You should have started this ages ago. Procrastinators had this one, right? You should have done this ages ago. And perfectionists will continually hear a dialogue that says, like, well, you messed that up. It's like everyone, oh my God, you almost let that mistake go out into the public where people could see it. That's the kind of dialogue that's going on inside perfectionists. If you tell yourself, like, oh my, you'll never amount to anything. You'll never be able to write a book or start a business or whatever it might be. You'll never succeed. If you attempt to, you will end up heartbroken, financially ruined, and living out of a cardboard box. These things sound ridiculous and very extreme, but you'd be amazed how many people have, that last one was actually a quote directly from a friend. who is not living out of a cardboard box, is moved to America, is having a very good life. But these are the things that his top dog said, and my top dog says all sorts of terrible things. And so we want to talk about that, because if you don't learn how to manage your top dog, it will rule your life, and it will hold you back in so many different ways. What will people think? Elka says. That's one of her top dog messages. Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? What will people think? What will they think indeed? The coach Pete Cohen said, what was his quote I put in my book, Fuck Work, Let's Play? He said, the quality of your inner life is determined by the quality of your inner dialogue. And this top dog thing is a big part of that. And what we need to do, so first of all, I want to talk about where it comes from. And the top dog is basically something you took on from your parents, from your carers, to a certain extent from society while you were very young. And often, what's the Gestalt term for that? I've forgotten the word for it. Introject. Right. So Gestalt says that we all have introjects, which are things we've swallowed whole. And what we've done is, because we haven't chewed them apart and looked at them and analysed them, we've swallowed them whole, and then we have to regurgitate them to other people. It's like, you can't do that. You know, you don't even know why we're saying it. It's like, you can't, how dare you do that? You know, how are you going to make a living? When somebody suggests that they might go and do something they love. And that's something you've ingested from your parents. And the idea is that in Gestalt is that, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but that we ingested it before we had teeth. So really, really young. Some element of it was there before we even had language, before we even had teeth. So we just swallowed it whole. And then we just kind of regurgitate these concepts to other people, unfortunately, sometimes, and so pass on the hurt to other people. And so what we need to do is we need to find these things and pull them apart and shine a light on them. And over time, if you do that, you shine a light on them and they just kind of melt away in the sunlight. And so the things that my, top dog used to give me trouble for, I can't even remember half of them. It gave me trouble for 20, 30 years. Yeah, I used to have depression and anxiety. I mean, that was partly biological because I've got some stuff going on with my metabolism. But part of it was just stuff I'd picked up and what my top dog was saying to me, a good part of it. And some of those things I can't even remember anymore. And that's a sign that you've kind of you've worked through this stuff really well. So this is where they come from. It comes from parents. It comes from elder siblings. Also, they're cultural. So there are specific ones to each culture. There's Elka's Germany. I'm sure there'll be there'll be some great top dog messages from Germany, I'm sure, which are like cultural messages. If we take British ones, there's ones like "Don't get your hopes up." That's one I got. "Don't get your hopes up" was a big one. It's like, geez, how am I gonna like imagine a better life and make it happen if I shouldn't get my hopes up? Another one is in Australia, they talk about tall poppy syndrome. So the tall poppy gets cut down. So don't stand out too much. Don't be too remarkable. It's only going to hurt you. In America, there's this concept that's come about relatively recently called "stay in your lane." And it's designed to admonish people who dare pass judgment on something that is not their, formal area of expertise. Like, you shouldn't have an opinion on anything that isn't your formal area of expertise. And they're kind of like, shut down messages. And when you get one of these things, it can be really, really brutal. I mean, a bad top dog message. Some of the worst ones are triggered by external criticism. So somebody else says something which your top dog says every day, and then it's real trouble, because it's like somebody else is confirming the worst thing you ever thought about yourself. Now, whether that person saying that thing actually is in any way correct is debatable. There might be an element of truth you can pull out of it, but because your top dog, in fact, the person has given you maybe a piece of feedback, might have given you quite a gentle piece of feedback which you can use, but your top dog has just turned it into, you're crap at this, because that's what you hear every day. So it kind of gets perverted and mutated when it comes through that that stuff. Oh, Leslie says, don't show off, nobody wants to look at you. There's a real British thing as well. I mean, Leslie, I know you've got a German surname. I can't remember if you've got German roots. But there's a real British thing about not showing off, which is not in any way the thing in America. I mean, the idea that you wouldn't sing your own praises is just like, what? Why? It's just really bizarre. So but when if you don't travel, if you don't notice these things, you think this is gospel. I mean, I'm sure the messages in Japan, for instance, are very different from the messages in America, very different from the messages in England. There'll be unique Scottish ones as well, I'm sure, and whatever else, and unique Irish ones. So there are cultural influences, and we take these, because everybody around us seems to be saying the same kind of message. Don't get your hopes up. A really important one in Britain, don't get ideas above your station. And it's from the military, right? A lot of our language, in fact, half our language is from Shakespeare and half our language is from the Navy in England. No, I mean, exaggerating, but a remarkable number. If you take out all the Navy language, all the Navy vocab, and you take out all the stuff that Shakespeare invented, you kind of lose half of the English language. It's remarkable. So ideas above your station is about, like, don't start getting ideas about how you should run the war if you're just a foot soldier. And I think it's a really interesting topic. And that's why it blows my mind when I look at people like Elon Musk, and he just goes, well, somebody interviewed him once. It was the guy who runs, what's it called? Is it Akasha? It's an education non-profit, which is amazing, an amazing thing. I can't remember the name of it now. Might be Akasha. And he said to Elon, so how did you choose these things of like a car and, PayPal, electric cars, space rockets, whatever? And he goes, well, I thought, what does humanity most need? And it needs to be able to do business online. It needs to be able to leave the planet. We need to be multiplanetary. And we need to transition away from fossil fuels. So I did that. And I went like, what? So I did that? What? It's such an un-British thing to say. It's like, I took the 3 biggest problems humanity is facing and I thought, yeah, I'll solve those. And he did, which is, I'm a big Elon fan. I know some people don't like him, but it's amazing what he achieved, what he has actually done. And it's such an un-British thing. I mean, he's South African, so South Africa will have its own kind of messages as well, and maybe he kind of escaped some of those. And also I got the same kind of instinct looking at some of the startup founders, people like Mark Zuckerberg. Was like, well, why shouldn't I have like everybody on the planet join my, register on my social network? It's really, really remarkable. So it's very un-British thinking. And I wonder if that isn't partly why there are very few British mega successful startups. Very few. And I wonder if it's because we dampen ourselves and we don't like to think big. So what can you actually do about this? Because this is the important thing. If we just tell you like, top dog ruins your life, it's not very empowering. So I want to give you some clues, some things that have helped me, some things I've learned from many years of training and workshops and reading and working with clients over the past 15 years. And the key really is to realize that I'm trying to think how to express this, but just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. So we need to get a chink of light between what Top Dog says and you accepting it. And once we've got a chink of light, you've got hope. If you can say like, that's a Top Dog message, this is why I like the term Top Dog, and not even inner critic is close, but I want to move it beyond internal dialogue, because the stuff the Top Dog says is wholly unhelpful. You may occasionally say to yourself, I didn't do a good job yesterday. That is fine. That's not a Top Dog message. You go like, I didn't do a good job. I should have prepared better. Or I think if I got there earlier, I would have been calmer. I've got to remember to get there earlier next time. Or whatever it is, or read my notes just before I go on, or whatever it is you're doing. That's helpful. A Top Dog message is like, you fucked it up again. It's like, you're rubbish at public speaking. You weren't prepared, you don't know what you're doing, everyone's laughing at you. Those kind of messages can only make you feel shit. And you might as well just throw them out wholesale, to be honest. So if you can put a chink of light between you and those kind of messages and go like, okay, I'm having that thought, but it's a Top Dog thought, then maybe you actually have a chance of not just taking it into your heart as a fact, as the absolute truth. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And one of the simplest things I found, which is a fairly recent discovery, and it's really a mindfulness exercise, I would call it. But I've noticed, and it's partly related to the lightning process, which I'll explain in a moment, which is a course I did quite a long time ago. And the thing that I do sometimes is in the morning, I try to catch any thought that's negative, and I just label it. Kat is talking about Byron Katie's The Work. Her stuff is good. So she's effectively doing where she asks like, is this true? There's 4 questions, and that can be very effective as well. So Byron Katie, if you want to look her up. But this really simple thing I do is, as soon as you wake up, notice any thought you have that is negative. So this isn't even necessarily like a really top doggy thought, but anything that's negative. And by negative, I mean any thought where you feel worse afterwards than before. Even if it's real, like I might die today, might do. How do I feel about it? It's still a negative thought. I'm not saying you should never have it, but if this is a slightly different kind of spin on what I'm talking about, but it's a useful one. And I found that for some reason, if you just label them, you don't even have to try to change them. And I go like, negative thought. And then I'll walk downstairs and I'll go and clean my teeth, and some other thought will come to me, and something else might be a bit negative, and I'll go like, negative thought. And then I just carry on doing that for a while. That alone has quite an interesting impact. That tends to make me feel happier that day. So you might want to try that. Just label them. And it's a little like the energy you want to bring to it is like counting sheep. So when you're trying to go to sleep and supposedly you count sheep. Actually, there's a better way of going to sleep in my opinion. But anyway, if you tune into your body is the kind of short version. But if you just label these things, just like you're labeling sheep as they fly over as they jump over a fence, and you're going sheep number 2, sheep number 3. That's what you're doing. You're just pinning a little label on it, going negative thought. You're not trying to change it necessarily, and you're not trying to challenge it, and you certainly don't want to go like, oh no, another negative thought. No, that's the wrong way to do it, because then you're going to spiral. So you're just going like, almost like, oh look, there's a cloud, there's another cloud, or there's a starling, there's another starling, there's another starling. It's like that kind of energy. And what it does is it's kind of like a mindfulness exercise, and it just puts that chink of light between you and the negative thoughts, which include top dog thoughts. So that's one thing you can try. And then the other thing you can do is you can actually challenge it and replace it. So if you have a thought that says, I am rubbish at public speaking, one of the traits of top dog thoughts is that they are damning. They are, like I say, they're not useful feedback that says like you should have, if you'd reread your notes, you would have kind of, or if you practiced the first opening lines of your talk, you probably would have had more confidence today. It's like, okay, make a note. I'm going to do this next time. That stuff's useful. Top dog stuff is stuff that's just damning and can only really make you feel bad. And it tends to be broad, and it tends to have what Marty Seligman talks about is the 3 Ps, this is a different 3 Ps than mine, of personalization, perseverance, and permanence. Is that right? But anyway, what it means is it was definitely your fault. This is going to go on like this forever. You're never going to get better. And it applies across your whole life. That's the quality of the top dog thing. That's permanence, pervasiveness, that's the other word. Permanence, pervasiveness, and personal. And if you see people with rock solid confidence, what I notice is that they actually almost do the opposite. They go like, no, actually, if a talk doesn't go well, they go like, well, that was a tough audience. And then like, their mood is completely fine. I mean, maybe there's a bit of useful feedback that might miss, but it's almost like going the opposite way. And at least they're not afraid of public speaking ever for that reason. They tend to externalize problems, if anything. So what we want to do is challenge those broad, sweeping statements and pick them apart. So if you say to yourself, I'm crap at public speaking, you just go, well, is that true? Well, actually, I gave a talk at my friend's wedding and it actually went down really well. Or when I'm just talking to one person, I'm fine. Or when I'm just talking to my friends, I'm fine. Or when I don't know what it is. Pick it apart. Is it always the case? Has there been a time when you've done it well? Was it about you, or was it about the audience? Or was it about a mismatch between your topic and the audience, which you couldn't have known about because you were given the wrong information? Was it really your fault? And so we might come out of this with a piece of something we can use to change how you approach it in future, but we're not allowing this blanket your crap stuff anymore, or you fuck that up, because that's not useful. It doesn't really, even if you could take it on, you can't really do anything with it. It's like if somebody else externally gives you your feedback and goes, you're crap. So, well, what am I supposed to do with that? It's just stupid feedback. It's like if you got something useful, say it. But like, I may or may not take your feedback on board if you can give me something useful. But I can't do anything if you just tell me I'm crap. So that's what we're looking for. So you can challenge it and say, I feel bad about the way my talk went today. I hadn't practiced the opening lines enough. Next time I'm going to make a point to practice my opening lines. And yeah, there'll be some embarrassment, maybe some shame even, that it didn't go well or whatever. But pick yourself up and go on, and know that being uncomfortable is the price you pay for doing remarkable things in life, unfortunately. Now, I was really interested when I learned a lot from doing this course called the Lightning Process. And they use this, it's a course invented by Phil Parker, who's become a friend since then. I did it, I think, in 2008 or something like that. So just before I wrote Screw Work, Let's Play, my first book. And I did it because I had mild chronic fatigue, and I had a chronic pain thing going on at the moment, which I'd had checked out and wasn't, doctors couldn't do anything about it. And it's good. In fact, he originally invented it, Phil. He was a osteopath, and he invented it as a way of managing chronic pain. And then he discovered that actually it seemed to be having really dramatic effects on chronic fatigue. Now, the Lightning Process is contentious because people who have really severe chronic fatigue and ME, have to deal with people telling them they're not really ill, which is not good. I just realised I might need a little bit of cortisol. Just hold on a second, because I'm still getting over this vaccine after effects. So, one of the things I have to watch. Phil designed this thing, the lightning process, for people, for pain, and then discovered that it was really useful for people with chronic fatigue. And what he discovered is that chronic fatigue is a real physical illness. It's not imagined, particularly ME. ME is the most vicious form of that. And there may well be a viral element in it because it often comes on after a virus, a bit like long COVID. And but what he's found is that if you can turn around your thinking from negative to positive, ME is, I can't remember, it's a really long, it's like myocardial encephalitis or something like that. And I'm saying lightning process. Somebody's just asking. Lightning as in thunder and lightning. And what he discovered is the lightning process had a dramatic effect on chronic fatigue and ME, and as well as chronic pain, and it helps a number of other things. It probably helps you recover from an awful lot of illnesses. But it had a particularly dramatic effect on chronic fatigue. But it became contentious because some people said, well, you're saying it's not a real disease then. He goes, no, it's not true. But some people really, really hate Phil. So if you Google him, just be prepared for some contention and positive and negative reviews. But he's had people who come along in wheelchairs and have walked at the end of a 3-day course. And what he does with people really, and he now trains people other people deliver it mostly. What he does is he gets you to interrupt every negative thought and coach yourself through a process where you actually step around different parts of the room and talk to yourself in order to then engender a more positive feeling. So I won't try to explain the whole lightning process because I wouldn't do it justice, and I know Phil is a little bit protective of exactly what goes on in it, and the danger is that I kind of make it sound too simple and then people don't do it. But there is, what I learned from that is the power of changing your thinking. And I got to the point after doing that lightning process training, because that's what he calls it, it's what you have to do is you have to, for the rest of your life, when you have negative thoughts, interrupt them and turn them into positive thoughts and positive feelings. And that changes your biology. It's amazing what it does. And then after a while, Richard just put a link in for the lightning process. After a while, it forms, because of neuroplasticity, this concept that the brain changes over time. It doesn't just stay as it is. You can build new connections. Basically, his thesis was that negative thoughts were a groove, this is how I think of it actually, a groove that's been cut into the brain. It's actually connections that have been made. And, there's lots of strong connections around you telling yourself you're a useless waste of space because somebody, when you were a child, said that, or you concluded that thought, even if your parents would never say something quite that unpleasant. Somebody says it sounds like Joe Dispenza. Yeah, quite similar. Yeah, similar kind of thinking. Although, this is kind of before Joe became famous and before The Secret. And what I realized after doing the lightning process is that when I could feel, because I'm pretty tuned into my body now. When I was 30 years old, I was completely disconnected from my body because of all the sort of general shit I'd been through in my life through medical things when I was a child. So I disconnected from my body entirely. And over the course of the next 10, 20 years, I'm now probably more connected to my body than most people are. And when I did a lightning process, I could feel my biochemistry change. When I have a negative thought, I can catch them, not always, but often, And then I can feel my biochemistry change. And because what happens is when you have a negative thought, your chemistry does change. I know your hormones change. I know quite a lot about endocrinology. And but also your brain chemistry, most importantly, changes from moment to moment. And then if you do the lightning process where you then engender a good feeling, then I could feel my biochemistry improve and go into positive. And what was weird is that when I was doing it more diligently, I haven't done it for a while, I must admit, but I do some other things that are similar. It is every time I would have a negative thought, it was like my body would go sort of down a little bit. And if you leave it, then you're more likely, the problem is if you feel bad, then you're more likely to have bad thoughts, and then you feel bad, and then you sort of climb yourself into a hole, if that's the right word. And instead of that, if I felt that slight down of a negative thought and I went and did a lightning process, I would end up slightly higher than I was before. And then if I had a negative thought, I would end up higher again because I was turning every negative into a much more positive. And the result is people report unusual levels of happiness. And it starts to cement over time. So it meant that now I don't have to do it very often. And but I've done a lot of other stuff alongside. For me, it wasn't just for lightning process. I've been in therapy for like 20 years. So that's had a big impact too. But the lightning process definitely helped with my chronic fatigue and with my mood and all this stuff. And what I learned from that is that moment by moment, you can change your mood. And you can actually pick any bloody mood you want to be in. You can generate it. And people who are into NLP will know this, right? So this is well known in the NLP world and in the hypnotherapy world. So this horrifies some people, but the brain doesn't know whether something's real or not. Part of what you do in the lightning process is when you've had a negative thought, you do this coaching process, which I won't go into. And then the key thing is you imagine a positive thing, maybe a moment from your history that will give you the feeling you want to feel. So if you feel nervous or if you feel down, you remember a time when you felt relaxed and calm and just content and really content. And you remember a time, maybe you're on holiday, or maybe it was just a moment when you were lying on the sofa, reading a book, or maybe you were with a loved one or whatever it is. And you just remember that and you envisage it until the moment that you feel you have the feeling as well. So you're imagining this scene. You're not just having a thought going, I'm a happy person, because that alone doesn't do very much. Instead, you remember a time or imagine an experience where you are a happy person. And you imagine it for long enough that you should be able to start to feel the chemistry change. It's just like NLP, as Leslie says. And I can feel that shift. And what you're looking for when you're doing that is not a magic cure. So that's one of the things that can be a trap. If you think like, I'm going to go and do this little process and imagine a happy thing and I'll feel amazing, I think that's an unrealistic expectation. Instead, if you do it multiple times a day and every time you feel a little bit worse, you make yourself feel a little bit better, and then you make yourself feel a little better again, it kind of builds on top of itself. So you're not going for a state of bliss in one quick turnaround. You're just kind of, instead of the negative drip taking you down into a hole, you've got a positive drip just lifting you up. And if you want to feel excited, just remember an exciting time or imagine an exciting scene, and you do that for 10, 20 seconds and you start to feel excited. It's weird. You can just program the human brain. It's funny when you realize that. So that's something you can play around with. And by the way, I'm not making light of if you got severe depression. When you're really in the hole, it's really difficult to pull yourself out. The lightning process probably would help. But I don't want to kind of, make light of something if you're really suffering badly at the moment. And I don't want you to make yourself feel bad that you somehow can't magically pull yourself out of it. But these are things that might at least help tip the balance. And, it may be that if you have severe depression, but what you need is, pharmaceutical intervention or something else. And certainly I'm a strong believer in therapy for one thing. Anyway, aside from that, something else that's really important, and I think I'll probably end on this, and you can ask some questions if you want to. I've got to go and do a live thing with a client of mine. I promised I'd talk to his business group at 7 p.m. So I've got to go and do that. But one of the things to bear in mind, one of the other things that will change your internal dialogue, loosen the grip of top dog over you, and generally make you prime your mind be what you want it to be, is your peer group. You've heard this phrase that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You need to be around people who are where you want to be. So you want at least some people, some of your peer group. If you want to get rich, you need to have some people in your peer group who are really good at money, who are rich, who are on the way to getting rich. If you want to be fit and healthy, you want to be around a peer group that's fit and healthy. Because then you look at them and you start to compare yourself and you see their daily habits and like they're all exercising every day. And okay, I'm not a nutcase for exercising every day. That's actually kind of normal in this group of people who look really good and feel really good. And same for top dog. So if you're around people who are very negative, you got to kind of pull yourself out of that and find some people who are more positive. Doesn't mean you have to write off all your friends, and certainly not write off a friend who's in a bad space, by the way. Sometimes, some gurus kind of go, dump all your friends who are losers. Well, we all go through periods of depression with the best will in the world, or grief or something, or loss. And you don't want people to cut you out of their life just because you're feeling down. But you can augment your peer group with people who are happier, who are fitter, who are richer, whatever it is you want to achieve. And see the kind of language they use and the habits they have and the way they think about things and this topic. And, be around happy people. It really, there's research, proper research. In fact, there is research that shows that the happiness level of your friends' impacts you. So you would imagine that whether your friends are happy or not is going to impact you. But they've discovered that the happiness of your friends' impacts you. That's how sensitive you are to soaking up these kind of vibes from other people. So look around and see, maybe there's someone who you've written off as being too shallow before, because the kind of emo world where people hang out with depressed people all the time and think that they're somehow, I was one of them, think that you're somehow smarter and more wise than other people because you're all miserable about the state of the world. It sounds funny now thinking about it, but anyway, if it's quite a teenage kind of attitude, then you might want to kind of go, maybe that friend who's actually seems like a really good person and is happy all the time, who I wrote off as too shallow because they don't have any deep thoughts about the pain of the world. Maybe you ought to go for a coffee with them occasionally and just, give yourself a bit of a break from your other peer group. So, and you definitely want to be around people some people are just really positive all the time. So those are great people to have around you. So Louise says, I've learned to write positive support on some of the Facebook posts of friends until I feel happier. Oh, that's nice. So you kind of give what you want to get. So you give encouragement to them. I like that. So the eagles don't scratch with the chickens. I like that. Yeah. And there are all sorts of, other people have talked about these things where you put notices up. I've got one over here. This is an Anthony Burrell poster. Think of your own ideas. This is more of a kind of reminder to me to honor my own ideas. But he's got some ones that are quite encouraging. And, you can put signs up around to remind you. But doing the inner work is important. There are all sorts of things you can put. You can put a whole framework of things in to affect your your inner dialogue. And it's a continual process. I'm still working on it. I could still be a lot more positive. Leslie says I've unfollowed all the negative people. That's not a bad idea, you know? Yeah, I don't know if I have any negative people I follow in the first place, but I think if somebody only moans all the time, that might be a bad person to be connected with on social media. That's probably not, unless they're going through a horrible time. Yeah, so that's probably not a bad idea. So hopefully that's been helpful. Some of those tips are things like just remembering, just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. You might want to try challenging a thought that you've had, picking apart a thought that's damning, that's too pervasive and permanent and personal, and taking out maybe if there's one piece of useful feedback, use that. Otherwise, think about, you might want to play some of these games where you go, here's a negative thought, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to now do this process a little bit like a lightning process. He's got a book, by the way, Phil Parker, a new book called, I can't remember, whatever Phil Parker's latest book is. I bought it for a quid the other day and it's well worth reading. I think it gives you some of the insights, the lightning process. So that's one thing you can do. Also, secret 4 in Fuck Work, Let's Play, do what you love and get paid for it, is all about this stuff. And it's everything I've learned from, pulling myself out of kind of severe depression and anxiety as in my 20s, I guess, to the point where I'm actually, I would say in some ways, above average mental health. And then how you kind of manage your time and your energy, your internal dialogue, particularly with respect to starting a business and creating an unusually unique career. So Louise says, sometimes just hearing that other people have these thoughts makes more sense of it. I tell you something else, everybody has these. Elon Musk will have them. Mark Zuckerberg will have them. Now, they'll probably have different flavors of top dog, but I've met so many self-help gurus in my, who are now my peers. They're all just as fucked up, if not more fucked up than everybody else. But the good ones have learned how to manage that, have worked on themselves, have had therapy, have done the kind of things I'm talking about, and have invested in recovery. And David says, so I need to read the book, not just leave it on my shelf. Good plan, yeah. You can cut to chapter 4, because that's secret 4, because that works quite well on its own. And I mean, now, it's my own opinion, but it might be worth the price of the book alone to read Secret 4 in Fuck Work, Let's Play. So if that's been useful, we can come back around and look at this again, and maybe there's some other aspect of it. There was a point I had written down about confidence. If you feel like you lack confidence, I always ask 2 questions, which are very related to this. What is your top dog telling you? And 2, who do you spend time with? Because those 2 things will have a massive impact on your confidence. So if you think you have a confidence problem that's holding you back in launching your own business or in taking your business to the next level, then ask yourself those 2 questions. What's top dog telling me? Who do I spend time with? And then reflect on those things and go, what do I want to do about that? I'm going to leave you with that thought. I'm going to go and get ready for my next thing, my Zoom call with Dan Barker, who's featured in the book, actually. He did some coaching with me some years ago. He now has a successful photography business. So, yeah, hope you found that useful. Andy says, oh, goodness me too, I've had it ages and feel it's indulgent because I know I'm going to love it. If you're talking about my book, if you have a book, I'm reading 5 books at the moment for the Business Book Awards because I'm a judge on the Business Book Awards. And I'm just going like, if I could just read a few pages a day, get through the introduction, Because, there's a lot of things I'm doing. They're quite good books. I'm enjoying them. But it's just like making the time to sit and not do anything else and read. And to just go, okay, if I read 4 pages, it's better than 0. So I recommend that if you're having problems, whether it's for my book or something else. All right, let me know what you think of that. If you're watching the replay, do give me your comments as well. Some good comments from other people in there about things you can do that help. I will catch you later in the group. Next week, our topic is how to play for profit and purpose. This is secret 5 in the book. So we're going to be talking about how to know that the thing you're launching, like a business you're launching or a product or a course or whatever, is going to sell and then also feel meaningful for you as well. And we're going to dive into that topic, which is one of my favorites. And this is where we really start getting into the nitty-gritty of the differences between businesses that make money and the businesses that don't. Alrighty, so I will see you next week. Well, I'll see you in the group before then. All right, cheers.